Within the stone tower, Xiao Yen watched the old figure, who was shutting his eyes tightly while being engulfed by the flame. His heart sighed in relief when he did not sense any unexpected occurrence. Currently, the body had already been successfully refined. The next step had nothing to do with Xiao Yen. As long as Yao Lao was able to successfully and perfectly merge with this body, he would truly be able to revive. Xiao Yen rubbed the cold sweat off his forehead. The continuous refinement of the body during these few days had been a great exhaustion to Xiao Yen. Fortunately, there were quite a number of medicinal pills within his storage ring that provided him with a great stamina. It was due to this that he had successfully endured through it. "Teacher, the subsequent matters will depend on you," Xiao Yen softly muttered, after which he sat on a stone platform by the side. His eyes were slowly shut as he entered his training mode and began to recover from the enormous exhaustion that was created during this period of time. After Xiao Yen entered his training mode, the stone tower once again descended into a silence. Only the low and deep sound of a burning flame resounded within the stone tower with a rhythm. Half a day swiftly flew past after Xiao Yen shut his eyes and trained. Only after the dou qi that his body had exhausted was completely recovered did he slowly open his eyes. A faint glow flashed across his dark black eyes, and he immediately became quiet. After recovering from his condition, Xiao Yan's eyes glanced towards the stone platform. However, he only saw that Yao Lao still had his eyes shut. Not the slightest activity was emitted. Xiao Yan frowned slightly when he saw this. However, he did not panic. This occurrence was ordinary. The various things used on this body were not ordinary. It was not as easy as one imagined for Yao Lao to completely merge with them. Currently, my strength still remains at the 1-star Do Zun level. However, the benefits that these couple of big battles brought me is quite great. After careful observation, I should have reached the peak of a 1-star Do Zun. Xiao Yen withdrew his thoughts and fell into a silence. After having swallowed the 3,000 burning flame, Xiao Yan's strength might have soared, but the speed after this soaring had once again returned to normal. According to this step-by-step training, it was likely that Xiao Yen would at least require another half a year in order to reach a 2-star Do Zun. However, his relationship with the Hall of Soul becoming increasingly worse and had even ended up exchanging blows with them. Even though he was still fine until now, Xiao Yen understood that the true experts from the Hall of Soul had yet to appear. When these experts appeared, he would perhaps be out of luck. Therefore, he must raise his strength quickly in the face of the pressure from this enormous mountain known as the Hall of Soul. From Xiao Yan's perspective, the fastest method to raise his strength was undoubtedly to swallow heavenly flame. However, he had already obtained the 3,000 burning flame, and he did not have any information about other heavenly flames. Xiao Yen did covert the sea heart flame of Old Mugu. However, ever since he had advanced to a Do Zun, that old fellow appeared to have disappeared. Hence, he had also abandoned the thought of snatching the sea heart flame. Heavenly flame? Xiao Yan's finger gently rubbed against each other. A moment later, he was suddenly startled. He flicked his finger over his storage ring, and a couple of ancient maps appeared in his hand. These 3 ancient map fragments were naturally the mysterious map that Xiao Yen had obtained many years ago. It recorded the information of the Heavenly Flame ranked 3rd on the Heavenly Flame ranking, purifying demonic lotus flame. With the increase in Xiao Yan's strength, Xiao Yen was also aware of the strength and rarity of these heavenly flames ranked at the front of the Heavenly Flame ranking. This purifying demonic lotus flame was known for its mysteriousness. Even Yao Lao had never seen this kind of heavenly flame. Xiao Yen had also checked through a great amount of information during these years and was similarly unable to obtain even the slightest news related to the purifying demonic lotus flame. If it was not because of the ancient map in his hand being the evidence, it was likely that even Xiao Yen would doubt that the so-called purifying demonic lotus flame existed in this world. 3 maps? It is still impossible to see anything. Xiao Yen carefully placed those 3 map fragments in front of him. He carefully studied them for a while, only to end up shaking his head helplessly. The Dochi continent was incomparably large. He was unable to tell where the location of the terrain recorded on the map was. Those winding and bending route caused Xiao Yen to have a headache looking at it. Ugh, looks like I must find the last ancient map. Otherwise, no one will ever know just where this purifying demonic lotus flame is located. Xiao Yen had no choice but to give up after some futile deep thought. His face was dispirited. He was already blessed by the heavens in order to be able to obtain these 3 ancient maps. That final ancient map was something that he had no clue about. He had also failed to obtain even the slightest information related to this ancient map during these years of searching. He wondered if the last map actually existed in this world. Now, all I can do is to pray that I will continue to be lucky. Xiao Yen sighed softly. He carefully kept these 3 ancient maps. No matter what the case was, this thing was related to the purifying demonic lotus flame. Even though the chances of him obtaining it was extremely low, Xiao Yen would still not give up. After keeping the ancient maps, Xiao Yen hesitated for a moment before clenching his hand. A couple of jade white bone fragments appeared in his hand. These bone fragments were naturally the Dosheng bone fragments that he had obtained from the ancient remains. Dosheng, an expert at this level, already possessed a great might to destroy the world. Just by stomping his foot, a mountain would be annihilated. This kind of expert had already successfully understood creation. Every part of his body was something that an ordinary person dreamed to obtain. It was not an exaggeration to say that one could transform into a dragon and soar to the sky if one obtained a little of it. Take this Dosheng bone marrow as an example. If it was given to a baby or a child less than 5 years old, even if the child was a useless person before, his bones would be refined after consuming it and turn into a genius. It might be difficult to believe in such an effect, but it was indeed the truth. Xiao Yan's hand carefully rubbed these few jade white bone fragments. A moment later, he widened his mouth. Purple-brown flame was spat out and wrapped around these bone fragments. A frightening temperature spread immediately. These bone fragments were extremely hard. It was not easy to shatter them. If it was not because Xiao Yen possessed the strong heavenly flame like the 3,000 lotus heart flame, it was likely that he could only simply watch the Dosheng bone fragment even if he knew that the Dosheng bone marrow was hidden within them. Of course, even with the aid of the heavenly flame, it was not an easy task to remove the Dosheng bone marrow from the bones. Fortunately, Xiao Yen was already mentally prepared. Therefore, his heart did not feel the least bit impatient when he saw that the rock-lined bones did not move even a little under the fierce burning flames. Instead, he steadily raised the temperature and slowly burned the bones. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye under this slow calcining by Xiao Yen. Xiao Yen once again withdrew from his training mode 2 days later. He watched the bone within the flame that had gradually turned gray in color. An involuntarily smile appeared. His hand was extended into the flame before pressing gently. Puff! After his finger pressed on the gray bone, one could hear a puff sound. The bone became soft before transforming into gray bone ashes that slowly scattered downwards. After these bone ashes scattered, 3 thumb-sized cream-white gel-like things appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. These 3 gel-like things were extremely small. Their surface possessed a colloid-like substance. When one's gaze looked through this layer, one could vaguely see the liquid slowly flowing within them. A wave of shocking mysterious energy quietly seeped out, causing a heat to gradually surge up Xiao Yan's eyes. Xiao Yen took out a jade bottle from his storage ring and carefully placed 2 Dosheng bone marrow gel-like particles into it, after which his finger pressed on the 3rd one. He hesitated for a moment before gently stuffing it into his mouth. The gel particles had basically dissolved in an instant. Before he could wait for Xiao Yen to recover, ocean-like majestic pure energy poured down like floodwater. It followed his throat and poured down, after which his whizzed and swept apart and surged towards the four limbs and bones of Xiao Yen. The frightening energy that poured in abruptly caused Xiao Yan's body temperature to be raised swiftly. Curling white smoke rose on his head. Xiao Yen hurriedly sat down when he sensed the transformation of his body. He swiftly entered his training mode and began to refine these sudden majestic energy. This refinement continued for 3 days before Xiao Yen tightly shut eyes slowly opened. He sensed the unpresented feeling of being filled with energy and involuntarily inhaled a gentle breath of air. Based on his senses, he had directly broke through from the 1-star level to the 2-star level. The miraculous effort that was present within a bone marrow gel piece was something that an ordinary Tier 7 and Tier 8 medicinal pill could not be compared with. There were not many medicinal pill that could raise the strength of an expert Dozun by 1 star. He exhaled a long breath of air and raised his eyes to look at the stone platform. Yao Lao at that spot continued to keep his eyes shut. There was a sign of it waking up. It seemed that the body this time around was too strong. Even with teacher's strength, he was unable to easily control it. Xiao Yen fell into a deep thought. He helplessly shook his head and mused for a moment before deciding to exit the tower first and allowed Yao Lao to complete the merger here. When Xiao Yen had just made his mind, he suddenly sensed that the entire stone tower violently trembled at this moment. Soon after, a cold cry that was filled with murderous intent sounded over this sky in a mighty manner. Falling Star Pavilion. Hand over Xiao Yen and Yao Chan. Otherwise, today, I will wash this place in blood.
Bang!
Xiao Yan's cry spread in a vast and mighty manner. Xiao Yan's expression changed intensely. His body suddenly stood up and his eyes looked towards the stone platform in a dense manner. Hall of Soul, has it finally arrived? All the disciples on the Falling Star Mountain stood up at this moment. Their gazes were surprised as they looked at the distant sky. Due to the defensive formation that was naturally formed by the meteorite, they were unable to see the situation outside. However, they were vaguely able to sense that the Falling Star Pavilion seemed to be faced with a great calamity. Feng Zunjia and the others were gathered on a square on the mountain top. Their expressions were grave as they looked at the sky. The Hall of Soul have come. Tianhua Zunjia knitted his brows and spoke in a deep voice. There are many strong auras outside. This time around, it seems that the Hall of Soul really intend to wash the Falling Star Pavilion in blood as a deterrence to others. A solemnness appeared on little fairy doctor's face as she spoke. Feng Zunjia nodded slightly. However, his expression was calm. He was aware that this day would arrive sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. Feng Zunjia slowly stepped forward. The seal in his hand changed and the falling star array in the sky rippled. Immediately, the space slowly became distorted and the situation outside clearly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Hiss! Everyone involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when they saw the scene in the outside world. Currently, the area outside of the Falling Star Pavilion had been surrounded by black fog that permeated the sky. Nearly 100 figures stood on the black fog in the sky, a short distance in front of them. Dark and dense eyes penetrated through the formation and saw Feng Zunjia's group that was hiding within it. Old Ghost Jai Xing. This old ghost has also come? Little fairy doctor glanced and found a familiar face amongst the many black-clothed people. Her face turned cold as she said, "There is also the Heibai Tianzuan whom we had met back then." Feng Zunjia shook his head and slowly said. The faces of little fairy doctor's group involuntarily changed when they heard these words of his. Their gaze looked towards where Feng Zunjia was watching and did indeed see 2 old men in black and white clothes standing there. From the appearance of these two, They were surprisingly the Heibai Tianzuan whom they had met once at the Death Soul Mountain range. 3 elite Tianzans had actually arrived. This Hall of Soul really seems to think highly of us. Feng Zunjia let out a long exhale as he said, Pavilion Chief Feng, what should we do now? The Hall of Soul has launched a big campaign. Moreover, from this momentum, it seems that they are not merely here to demand for someone. An elder from the Falling Star Pavilion spoke with a somewhat terrified expression. What is there to panic about? The Hall of Soul is not some kind association. They are planning to wash the Falling Star Pavilion in blood. Otherwise, why would they directly dispatch 3 elite Tianzans? Feng Zunjia frowned and chided. After which, his eyes looked around the Star Realm. He watched those thousands of Falling Star Pavilion disciples and spoke in a deep voice. Therefore, there is no other path except to engage in an all-out fight. Everyone here are elders within the Falling Star Pavilion. Today, the Falling Star Pavilion is faced with a calamity that we have never faced before. All of you plan to... Feng Zunjia's searing gazes turned towards the many elders of the Falling Star Pavilion and said, Pavilion Chief Feng, the Falling Star Pavilion is our root. The amount of effort we have put in for it is not less than anyone. Regardless of whoever it is that wish to destroy it, we will all fight to our deaths against them. The many elders had solemn expressions as they cried out in Yuzhen. Good. I, Fengxian, really have good eyesight. In that case, let out fight till our deaths. I wish to see just how dominating this Hall of Soul can be. Feng Zunjia cried out with a great force, causing the morale of all the Falling Star Pavilion's disciples to be braced. From the perspective of many people here, the Falling Star Pavilion was their root. If it was destroyed by others, what face would they have to roam the Central Plains in the future? Feng Zunjia, the old me advise you to obediently hand the people over. This Falling Star Pavilion's great formation cannot protect you. Old Ghost Zhai Xing's eyes were dark and dense as he looked at the space below. Although it was merely a sea of trees, he understood that this was only because of the Falling Star Pavilion great formation. The cold cry sounded, but no response was given. Old Ghost Zhai Xing involuntarily laughed out coldly when he saw this. His gaze turned towards the black-white clothed elders by the side and said, Let's attack together and break the formation. The activity from this trip of ours is too big. It is likely that the eyes from quite a number of factions had followed us. Therefore, we must use a bloody method to suppress the Falling Star Pavilion and use this opportunity to allow the other factions on the Central Plains to be aware that our Hall of Soul is not something that just anyone is qualified to offend. That black-white Tianzans nodded slightly when they heard this. Their gazes glanced below before raising their hands at the same time, after which they violently grabbed the space below. After the hands of those 3 were clenched, a frightening spatial strength hurriedly spread over the place. 3 invisible large hands grabbed heavily onto the empty space. A light surged immediately, and an invisible light barrier containing the glow of the stars appeared in front of everyone's eyes from nowhere. Break it! Old Ghost Zhai Xing coldly cried out. He suddenly clenched his hand violently. That invisible large hand violently smashed onto the invisible light barrier. Bang! A fist landed and numerous ripples spread on the light barrier. A loud rumbling sound resounded over the sky in a thunder-like manner. Bang, bang, bang. Following closely behind Old Ghost Zhai Xing, the frightening wind from the black-white Tianzans also swept down from the sky. Immediately, it poured onto the light in a storm-like manner. Under this fierce attack by 3 elite Dozuns who had reached the 5-star Dozun level, that light had become shaky. All the disciples within the Falling Star Pavilion looked at the repeatedly trembling light barrier from within the star realm. They suddenly held their weapons in their hands with a greater force. The great formation is unable to endure the attacks from the 3 of them. Feng Zunjia watched the light barrier that was about to be shattered. His expression sunk slightly as he said, "The Hall of Soul has sent 3 Tianzins over this time around. There are also 7 Dozuns. Quite a number of Dozongs has also come." Feng Zunjia's eyes flickered as he spoke in a deep voice. "The 7 Dozuns and the other experts are not considered troublesome to deal with. However, Old Ghost Jai Xing Trio is a great trouble." His voice paused before suddenly clenched his teeth and spoke, "I will block both the black-white Tianzins. How can you alone be a match for the 2 of them?" Little Fairy Doctor and the rest frowned immediately when they heard this. The other elders of the Falling Star Pavilion also had a drastic change in expressions as they continuously objected. "There is no need to defeat them. All that we need to do is to delay the time until Yao Chen successfully exit his retreat." Feng Zunjia inhaled a deep breath and said. Everyone became quiet when they heard this. It had been half a month since Xiao Yen and Yao Lao had entered the stone tower. However, not even the slightest news was transmitted from it. Just what use this little bit of time was to them. "I will deal with Old Ghost Jai Xing. Leave one of the black-white Tianzins to the Sky Demon puppet. As for the other Tianzuan, Little Fairy Doctor and Tianhua Zunjia will join hands to deal with him." While everyone were quietly and helpless, a calm voice suddenly resounded. Immediately, that skinny figure that caused Little Fairy Doctor's group to calm down also slowly appeared in the midair above the mountain. "That is Junior Pavilion Chief Xiao Yen. He has exited from the retreat." The attention of all of the disciples within the Falling Star Pavilion was braced when Xiao Yen appeared. During these years, Xiao Yen could be considered to have really made a name for himself in the Central Plains. Everyone within the Falling Star Pavilion were also aware of his strength. His appearance was just like a great strength, causing the morale of the Falling Star Pavilion to surge. "You have come out? What about Yao Chen?" A joy immediately surfaced on Feng Zunjia's face when he saw Xiao Yen appeared. He hurriedly asked the question. "He still needs time." Xiao Yen slowly shook his head. His gaze looked at the repeatedly shaking light barrier. A densely cold-faced old ghost Jai Xing was outside of the light barrier. There was a cold glint flashing across his dark black eyes when he did so. This old ghost was really too hateful. Time and time again this old ghost had come and find trouble. This time around, he will definitely not allow this old ghost to escape. "Leave the last Tianzuan to me. Allow Little Fairy Dr. Jiejia and the rest to block the other elite Dozuns." Qing Lin by the side hesitated for a moment before she suddenly spoke softly. "Huh." Little Fairy Doctor was startled when she heard this. She glanced at Qing Lin, smiled warmly and said, "It's fine. Old Mr. Yao and I can block him." Xiao Yan's eyes also turned towards Qing Lin. The latter smiled at him. She crossed her hands together and said, "Young Master Xiao Yen, you can be rest assured. I can block him." Xiao Yen knitted his brows slightly when he saw Qing Lin's insistence. Finally, he nodded slightly. Although Qing Lin's strength was only that of a 1-star Dozun, she possessed a mysterious treasure like the triple jade-green snake flower pupils. Moreover, her body also hid the soul of an ancient heaven serpent. Such a ferocious being was something that even Xiao Yen was unusually afraid of. From the looks of her appearance, it was likely that she was not merely putting up a brave front. Little Fairy Doctor was also startled when she saw Xiao Yen actually agreeing with Qing Lin. Immediately, she felt helpless. However, her heart was also a little rest assured. She understood that Xiao Yen was not a reckless person. He would not allow Qing Lin to fight with a Hall of Soul Tianzuan without reason. Since he did this, it was likely that he had his reasons and his confidence. Xiao Yen waved his hand. 11 puppets appeared in the midair, after which his gaze was lifted and he slowly said, "Open the great formation. It is about to be broken." Feng Zunjia also nodded when he heard this. His hand's seal changed, and the light barrier in the sky trembled before slowly scattering. Following the disappearance of this light barrier, the entire place gradually became dark. The black fog that permeated the sky also appeared in front of everyone's gaze in close proximity. Old Ghost Zhai Xing smiled coldly as he watched the slowly scattering light barrier in the sky. Immediately, his gaze penetrated through the space and looked towards the skinny figure standing on the mountain top. His dense voice carried a bone-chilling coldness as it resounded over the entire sky. Xiao Yen, I have said that we will meet each other again. This time around, the old me will see just who will be able to rescue you.